Because of all your subprime crimes, there are folks that have hard times. Because the bank is greedy, honest folks are needy.
So we have some advocates here, and you know that we're going to get a more thorough explanation from Vanessa and from others about exactly what's happening in the courts that cost us the need to raise $18,000 for starters to deal with a $12,000 sanction on a lady who is simply trying to appeal unjust decisions by judges that are gutless because they could make different decisions if they only would. And they don't do the right thing, they just say, well, here's the book, here's the guidelines, this is what I'm going to do. The law protects me from making an immoral decision, so I do. So we need, in fact, to come together, raise this $18,000, and I'm going to tell you tonight, we're going to do that. So help me to welcome the person who's going to help us get this movement to the new level, Vanessa Fluker, please.
I think it's very important that we realize that this is not just about me. Amen. It's about the client too, who is still fighting to stay in her home. But it's not just about her. It's about every borrower who could potentially find themselves in this circumstance. It's about having a chilling effect on the law for any attorney who thinks that they may want to advocate in this area, to have the fear that vigorous advocacy on behalf of their client could result in sanctions, not to mention a potentially tarnished reputation. So I think that it's important that people understand that this is a fight for the people. And I think it's important to understand why we are fighting. Reverend Rowe alluded to the basis of why it is so important to get people out of their homes. But I'm just going to make it a little more simpler for you. This is exactly what I told Congress when I was in Washington testifying. We are foreclosing on each other. Amen. It is a little known fact that after the $700 billion bailout and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were taken over by the government turned around through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and underwrite and insured a significant percentage of the quote-unquote subprime toxic loans. Right now, the federal government owns or controls approximately 75% of residential loans. Why is that important? Because in Detroit, fair market value of a home may be $10,000 or $12,500. As one of my clients sitting here tonight, Mr. Robinson, able to be successful in court. We tried everything. Get a modification. They wouldn't modify the loan. Tried to buy them house back above market value. Wouldn't buy the house back. Why? Because they can get paid the full mortgage value. And the full mortgage value is being paid with our tax dollars. Until you understand the vast profit, you can't understand why the struggle is so important. You can't understand why people are being foreclosed on. And now, there's a trend because it's so lucrative. I have numerous clients who aren't even in default. Their mortgage payment is being taken out of their account every single month. But in their rush to push these insured loans to foreclosure out the blue, they get a foreclosure notice. They're like, wait a minute, my mortgage has been paid every month. Well, hey, just too bad. So they're in court litigating and have never missed a payment. So people have a tendency to think, well, I make my payments, can't happen to me. Or it's not me, you know, I own my house outright. but your housing value is worth $2.95. So it doesn't matter where you are with respect to home ownership. This affects you. It affects your community, and it affects our state and our ability to profit and be successful. And it's not just here. As Congressman Carnage was saying, this is a national problem. Just last week, I was in New York with the UAW rallying at Chase headquarters for them to stop abusing the people and the borrowers. And I could have been here in Detroit, except it was an East Coast accent. The stories are exactly the same. I tried to work with my lender. I sent them the modification papers 5, 6, 7, 8 times. No one will work with us. Why? Because of profit. And despite the fact I go to court and fight hard every single day, it doesn't matter if I were to be successful on every single case. It would only be a drop in the bucket of the tens of thousands of people that are being foreclosed and thrown out in your community. The only way this is going to be stopped is by collective action, by letting the banks know we're not going to tolerate it anymore, by letting the legal system know we are not going to tolerate injustice, and by letting our legislators know we will not take this anymore. I'm kind of like Commissioner Scott. You give me a mic and that's a dangerous thing. But I will close in saying this. The situation that has occurred is egregious. People should be able to fight for their home and to have an avenue legally to do that without fear of sanctions. During the process of this sanction hearing and during the course of the litigation surrounding it, if you represent yourself, you have a fool for an attorney. And being a wise person, I hired the best I know, Jerry Goldberg. So at this time, I'm going to call up Mr. Goldberg, and he can give you more of the legal details of the litigation and the current status of the case.
Let me first say that I've been a radical my whole adult life since I was 18 years old. But when it comes to being an attorney, there's no one who's a people's attorney like Vanessa.
Amen.
A few weeks before this happened, Vanessa told me that some of the clerks in the circuit court came up to Vanessa, and all the clerks love Vanessa, because the clerks are workers like we are, not like the judges are, who are out of touch with the reality that we face and sit in their cushy jobs and throw people out of their homes routinely every day. And see, a lot of the clerks were talking about, a lot of the judges were talking about Vanessa, and they don't like Vanessa. And why don't they like Vanessa? Because Vanessa will take on cases to fight to keep people in their homes that no one will take on, that I won't take on. And like I said, I'm a radical. She works 84 hours a week. Literally, we share an office. She'll take on a case, and when she takes on a case, she doesn't just go into court one time and represent the people. She goes in, and then when it gets dismissed, she appeals it, and she fights and uses every means she can to fight to keep that person in their home. And writes briefs, she's writing motions every single day. I can't imagine how she does it. Every single night, she's working, doing it, because that's the kind of attorney that she is. That she believes that people have a right to stay in their homes, and as an attorney, she's going to use everything in her power to do that. And you know, a lot of the judges don't like it because it makes them work too hard, or puts them on the spot, or makes them make a choice. Who are you going to be for? Are you going to be for the bank? I mean, the best case I ever had was I was in front of a judge in Macomb County. Interesting enough, he was Candace Miller's husband. But he gave me the best decision I ever got. And in that court, that judge said, this is a court of equity. It's a court of justice. And I decide what's just. And I don't think it's just that Wells Fargo got $25 billion and my client, who had lost their home for a period of time and now were working, couldn't even get a modification. And he made the first ruling in the country that said that a failure to modify a loan was a violation of the law. He took a choice. He chose the people instead of the banks. Unfortunately, most of the judges we have are choosing the banks ahead of the people. And as more cases get brought out, as more of the fraud gets brought out, while you'd think they'd be more interested in ruling for the people, it's going the other way. Because now they got to work harder to represent the banks. And unfortunately, that's the situation. And Vanessa is the attorney who, of every attorney in this city, I can say it, works the hardest to keep people in their homes. And she fights like a nail, tooth and nail, and if she can find anything, any angle to get to fight for, she'll use it, and that's what a good lawyer is supposed to do. That's what a good lawyer is supposed to do. Unfortunately, in this case, she was in front of a judge, Colombo. This judge, that from the day this case got brought in front of him on appeal, had made up his mind that he was going to sanction Vanessa. And if you don't believe it, let me read his own words. This was a December 3rd hearing. It was the first hearing in front of Colombo on this case. No briefs had been filed. He had just gotten the case. He had, it was just really what they call like a status conference. But here's what he had to say that day. I think she thinks she can raise all these new issues, like an Elliot Larson civil rights claim in violation of the Fair Housing Act, racism, or things like that. Well, we have a significant res judicata here, in my opinion. And so that's basically how I read. The district judge dismissed the case, saying Judge Colombo decided the issues that should have been decided. And I tell you, if I find that you're wrong on this, Ms. Fluker, I'm going to seriously consider assessing attorney fees against you. I'm very unhappy at what you're trying to do. I don't think you can do it, but we'll see. If you're not right, you're going to be in trouble with me. This is a judge talking. I'm telling you right now. This was before any briefs were ever filed in this case. This case had nothing to do with the briefs that were filed with the legal issues. It had everything to do with a judge who'd made up his mind that for whatever reasons, and there are various reasons that there could be behind it, that he was going to get Vanessa for continuing to fight for this client. That he was going to get her. That he was tired of this client fighting to keep her home, even though the client was paying an escrow of $1,440 a month that ended up going to the bank, was paying every month while she was fighting the case, but he was tired of it. There are a lot of reasons, and lots come out, and I'll talk about it. But let me talk a few words about what the issues are in the case, because they really weren't that complicated. What happened was the woman, the client had filed her own case, a pro se complaint. Vanessa represented her in circuit court. It was like an accounting issue. The case got tossed out. But after she got tossed out, about simultaneously with her being tossed out, an organization, the Center for Community Justice and Advocacy, on their own, who had worked for the woman to try to get a modification for a period of a couple years from RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, and the client, from what I understand, had been put in a subprime loan despite having excellent credit, like most African Americans find themselves in this city. But anyway, they filed their own case based on a pattern of practice of discrimination by this bank that they had uncovered, using her as an example in the case. It was an independent complaint. When Vanessa found out about this discrimination complaint, she raised as an affirmative defense to the eviction that there was a violation of the Fair Housing Act, and that's recognized. It's a recognized defense, and that's what Colombo sanctioned her on. He said, well, I've already ruled on this case, but even though there was a new issue in this case, and the new issue was the fact that a community organization had filed a civil rights complaint against this bank that implicated this client's own mortgage, and this client stood to benefit from that case if it was successful, and that's a legitimate affirmative defense. Even though this was a legitimate legal issue, the judge ruled that not only did he rule against the client, but he ruled that this was what they call a vexatious appeal, that there was absolutely no legal basis for this appeal whatsoever. And we have challenged it. Now, the other thing that we uncovered right at the day of the hearing, we happened to find out that this judge had gotten a mortgage from Charter Bank, and then two refinancings, one from Charter Bank and one from RBS. RBS, which is the bank, is Royal Bank of Scotland. And Charter Bank, for anybody who didn't know, is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Scotland. And under the Michigan court rules and the judicial canons, if there's even an appearance of impropriety, a judge has a duty to disqualify himself, or at least to inform the client that there could be an appearance, and to give the attorney and the client a chance to raise disqualification. In this case, the last refinancing occurred 2 months before he directed the defense attorney for the bank to file a motion to get this woman thrown out of her house. So we felt that at least there's an appearance there. And so we have filed now a motion that Judge Colombo should be disqualified from this case. And we've also filed now a motion for reconsideration, and we took it quite seriously. We gave him a book to read. Maybe we'll let him do a little work. And we're asking that he be disqualified, that another judge take a look at the issues in this case, reconsider the sanction issue, and if we don't win at this level, it will be going up on appeal. And actually, after having worked on the brief and looked at the law, I feel absolutely confident that we will win the appeal, that these sanctions cannot be upheld. In an appeal, you have to file a bond. And the bond will be anywhere from 1.5 times, or may even be twice as much of the actual sanction itself. And that's why we're talking about raising $18,000 and probably more than that, just to cover the bond and as well as the costs on the appeal. It's really the banks, more than anyone else, that have destroyed our city. That's right. And they've destroyed our neighborhoods. That's right. Who emptied the city? It's the banks who emptied the city. And we should keep this in mind. That these are and what kills me right now, and unfortunately, if the politicians, we raised to Governor Granholm in 2007, that there was a state of economic disaster facing us. In Detroit now, it's comparable to, it's acknowledged now, our population loss, the only city that faced a loss like Detroit was New Orleans. And we said that that's what we had. We had an economic Katrina in Detroit. I say that to say, we have a fight on our hands. And it isn't just about Snyder, because that was Granholm who wouldn't do it, a Democrat. It isn't just about Snyder, who's not no good, pro-corporate, anti-poor pig, as we all know. But they've all forgotten about the people. They've all forgotten us. And we got to get together. We can rebuild our city. The banks owe us reparations. What kills me is the same banks that destroyed the tax base in our city now get first lien on the tax dollars. 80% of school aid goes to pay debt service to the banks. State revenue sharing goes to a trustee to pay debt service to the banks. You know, we're all opposed to the emergency financial manager, but the banks already directly control our city. They have the first lien on our funds, and they have the first lien on a tax base that they destroyed. It makes no sense. We need a moratorium on foreclosures. We need a moratorium on debt service to these banks. We need to take our city back for the people. And this fight for Vanessa is part of this overall fight. And we're going to win this fight, and we're going to organize the people and win a moratorium on foreclosures, and we're going to reoccupy those empty homes, bring people back into our city, rebuild Detroit from the people's point of view, which means taking it from the banks. So let's get together and fight.